Clarkston, Lewiston, and KNWO 90.1
So she won't be with us then. Good evening, everybody. Today is January 3rd, 2017, our first Moscow City Council meeting for 2017. Happy New Year to everybody. And I will start this off. John?
Would you please join and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Okay, approval of the City Council minute meetings of December 19th, 2016.
I would move approval as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Jim to approve the minutes of December 19th of 2016. I'll start the roll with Walter.
Aye.
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 Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything for us today,
Report
sir?
tonight, sir.
Okay.
Well, by the way, thank you everybody that came tonight for braving our Arctic blast to come out and be with us this evening. I just wanted to share that as well.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't put out a congratulations to the street crew and our emergency services personnel who've been putting in just incredible hours and keeping the snow off the streets better than I've seen ever.
Gary, I appreciate your comments on that, and that was something that I was going to,
And when we got to the report stage of our meeting, I was going to talk a little bit about that. So, because I'm very proud of the job that the team has been doing with that.
Thank you.
So,
thank you for mentioning that. Okay, item number 3 is mayoral appointments. I've got 4 appointments, and a fifth one that somebody's already been on here, and that's Art Betke, but he's got one more year to serve on the Urban Renewal Agency, so I won't be mentioning his name. But Planning and Zoning, Scott Gropp, expiration date of 12/31/2021. Brock Cherry, Planning and Zoning Commission, term expires 12/31/2018. Aaron Bacon, Moscow Pathways Commission, expires 12/31/2018. And John Weber, Urban Renewal Agency, expiration 12/31/2018. I would entertain a motion from somebody to.
I would move approval of the slate of nominees.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Art and a second by Catherine to approve all the mayoral appointments. I'll start the roll with John.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And aye.
okay. Any of those that are here, would you like to please stand? You get a chance to come in and talk. I know Brock's here. Brock, would you like to address us?
Come on up. This is Brock Cherry, everybody.
Hello, my name is Brock Cherry. I reside at 2324 White Avenue here in Moscow. And me and my wife, we have lived in Moscow for a little over 2.5 years. Originally, we came up here for graduate school, and we ended up falling in love with this gem here on the Palouse. And it's easy to fall in love with it after you've lived in southeastern Idaho, where I had been in the desert for many, many years. And we do not plan on going back. I am a graduate student studying bioregional planning and community design at the University of Idaho, where I will graduate this spring. I hope that my education and specialized training will bring a breath of fresh air to the commission. But more importantly, I believe that as a member on the commission, I represent a demographic that isn't currently represented, which is that of the emerging professional, the student, and the younger families. And I hope to be able to work side by side with the commission to create great growth decisions for the city of Moscow. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also the City Council.
Thank you, Brock, and we for volunteer for the planning and zoning. And my first stint with anything in city government was on planning and zoning. I served 5 years on that board, and some of the folks are still on there that helped educate me on planning and zoning because I knew absolutely nothing about it, which so I was very thankful for. So thank you. Anybody else here that I just announced? Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 4, which is public comment mayor's response period. This is a 15-minute time frame that we leave open for folks that want to visit with us and tell us
what's on their mind, and we have a very special guest that I want to introduce this evening, and it is Miss Cassie Lewis, who is Miss Idaho. So, Cassie, would you please come up to the podium and tell us a little bit about yourself, young lady?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me this evening. So my name's Cassie Lewis. I'm Miss Idaho USA 2017. I just won that title about 2 months ago, so I've been trying to get a chance to come and meet everyone here. So I do live here in Moscow. I've been living here for about 3 years. I grew up just over the border in Colfax, Washington. So I'm native to the Palouse. I moved here to Moscow after I graduated from college. I came for a job. I ended up leaving that job and staying here just because I love the community aspect here, the people we have, and the opportunities that are around here as well. So being Miss Idaho USA, my goal for the year is to work with students primarily in middle school and high school on my Be Your Own Person platform. So that platform came about when I was in preschool. My teacher told my parents, "You should be so proud because Cassie is truly her own person." And as a 5-year-old, I thought she was being nice and calling me a little bit strange. And so I didn't like that for the longest time. But growing up, my parents brought that up often about how I was able to stay true to my own morals and my own values when other kids were just falling by the wayside doing what other kids were doing. And so that's kind of the story that I want to use this year to encourage other young people to not give in to peer pressure and find out what they're passionate about and pursue that no matter what anyone else is doing or what anyone else is telling them to do. So I'm honored to have represented Moscow at the Miss Idaho pageant, and I'm very excited to go on to Miss USA this summer, which will be live on Fox at some point. We don't have a date yet, but I'll be sure to come back and let you know when that happens. But I want to be as involved in the local community as possible. My duties do take me around the state and out of state from time to time, but when I am in Moscow, I'd love to be as involved as I can be. So if there are any events going on that anyone would like me to be a part of, I'm happy to do that. So I'll be staying till the end of the meeting if anyone has questions, or you can find me on any of my social media platforms as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Okay, now don't run off. I got something for you.
Yes.
A couple of comments. Cassie, number one, we're very, very proud of you. Somebody from here in Moscow that is Miss Idaho is a big deal for us. And I got to share with everybody here, I've got a chance to meet you. I don't know, it's been a year and a half ago or so, maybe a little longer. And I've spoke with you several different times on various occasions. One was at the Veterans service that we had at the fairgrounds in November. Anyway, this young lady here is a very determined young woman, and I really appreciate that. I like that moxie in people, and you're kind of an industrious person, and so I'm really proud of you for what you've been able to do. And so before you sit down, does anybody on council want to say anything to Cassie?
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you braved the cold weather as the other 6 people did to come and see us tonight.
Yes, of
We do
course.
appreciate that. And looking forward to your participation within the city and within the state. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cassie.
Okay, the next item of order is our council organization. I'm going to turn this over to Council President Art Betke.
Outgoing Council President Art Betke.
Even though he's a short timer here,
We're going to still keep this guy around, and he'll be dogging things along here, I'm sure. As
Yes.
the group, so
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council met in a workshop in, December 19th or so, and arrived at the new council organization that will be in effect for the 2017 year. The council switched up all of the commission assignments this year and has new administrative and public works and finance committee members as well. So for this next year, the members of the administrative committee are Catherine, let's see. Okay. Catherine Bonzo, John Weber, and myself are on the administrative committee. Gina Teruscio, Walter Steed, and Jim Boland will be on the Public Works and Finance Committee. In addition, the council voted for Jim Boland to become the new council president and Catherine Bonzo to become the new council vice president. Relative to the commissions and committees, the Arts Commission will be represented with Jim Boland, the Building Code Advisory Committee by John Weber, Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, John Weber, Farmers Market Commission, Jim Boland, Historic Preservation Commission, Walter Steed, Human Rights Commission, me, Moscow Pathways Commission, Gina Teruscio, Parks and Rec Commission, Catherine Bonzo, Planning and Zoning Commission, Walter Steed, Sustainable Environment Commission, Gina Teruscio, Transportation Commission, Catherine Bonzo, Tree Commission, me. Other appointments that are on is the 1912 Center Facility Committee, Catherine Bonzo, and the 1912 Center Use Committee, Walter Steed. Let's see. CETA and Clearwater RC&D are me. Moscow Volunteer Fire Department, Catherine Bonzo. Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee, Gina Teruscio. Palouse Knowledge Corridor, Jim Boland. Proposed for the SMART Board is Walter Steed. Urban Renewal Agency that we just talked about. The 1-year position until next year is me. The 2-year position is John Weber. And that was what the commission or the council came up with this year by way of representation on commissions and committees. And I would move acceptance of this slate of people.
I'll second that.
Okay. Art made a motion to approve. John made a second on that to approve the city council assignments. John, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I was
okay.
Either going to make the motion or second it.
Okay, John, I'll start the roll with you.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, those assignments are set.
Now we have the ceremonial switching of the seats.
Yep, now we'll have the ceremonial, the president to my right, vice president to my left. We'll take a second for everybody to shuffle around. John and Walter will stay us where they want, unless they want to grab a different chair. They can do that.
We're going to book in y'all.
See if the power works over here. Yeah,
You kept it warm for you, Jim.
It's pretty comfy, Art.
Yeah, it squeaks when you turn, though.
Okay, we are all set. We are going to move on to item number 6, which is the noise ordinance report by Chief James Fry, our Chief of Police. Good evening, Chief, and thank you for being with us on this frigid night.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to come and present the noise ordinance report. So as you can see on the screen, in 2016, we responded to 468 noise complaints. We issued 5 citations, and the fines for those was $255 for each of the citations issued. Off to the right there, the Idaho Code 186409, we issued 4 of the 5 under that code, and 1 was actually issued under that code but was reduced down to the city code. And we had 1 of those dismissed, and 1 is still pending. I also have the 2016. So you can see we declined just a little bit from 2015. Our citations went up. And what I can tell you about the citations and when we respond to those type of calls, it's not the first time that we respond that we issue a citation. There's always an educational piece where we warn and we advise the individuals of the ordinance and of the state code before we issue a citation. So those are probably a second or a third time that we've actually responded back to that location within that same evening. So,
Chief, and that's up to the officer's discretion, dependent upon how the party accepts their invitation to talk to them.
Yeah, and as you can see, we respond to quite a few calls, and a lot of people, after the first time we show up, they break up the party or they turn down the music or whatever's going on. So we have a lot of compliance with our community, which is good. And with our community policing philosophy, we continue to try to educate. And I think what you're starting to see is some of that education's paying off, and we continue to see a decline in our noise complaints.
I can remember when this was brought up and we passed a noise ordinance in 2008 because I was on council at that time. And geez, there was a group of folks, not a big group, but there was a group of folks that were so concerned about the police department going overboard on this thing. And of course, that was just hype. It's never happened, but you can see how the complacent came down. And it was problematic the way that the old system was. And so I was glad to be a part of that when we got it changed, because it really helped. Walter has got a question.
Chief, with the 4 to 6 year turnover that we have in college students, can you elaborate any more on the reason for the decline that we see there? I mean, you're not dealing with the same people over and over and having to get into their heads over a 20-year period. You've got a few years to explain to them how it works and for them to.
Well, I think what happens over time is no different. You know, if it's whether it's in a fraternal system or in an apartment complex or whatever, you always have an older group that are there that I think that are explaining to this younger, the freshmen possibly that, hey, you know what, they show up, they're cordial. We need to shut the thing down when they get here and move on. So I think that, there's some self-education there as well that just happens naturally.
Okay.
My question has to do with, do you have it mapped?
We haven't, but we actually have a new program coming in that I think we can start mapping and showing where our problem areas possibly are, if there really are. With 468, it's pretty spread out across, the apartments and some up on campus. And, of course, A Street's got a high level of apartments and stuff. So you're going to obviously probably have, more in some of those areas, but I bet you would see it's pretty well spread out across the city.
Seems to me, Chief, with 468 calls and only 5 citations, 463 behaved pretty good on the first visit.
And that's really what we're there. We're just trying to get people to shut down the music or break up the party so there's not such a large group of people making noise. And our emphasis is to educate, not to issue citations. But sometimes when you go back a second and sometimes a third time, sometimes you have to issue a citation just to make them be compliant.
Get their attention.
Yeah. Anything additional?
I was on the council when this revised noise ordinance was revised, and Bill was right, he was there too. There was a lot of consternation about the police department overacting, overreacting. I didn't think it would happen, and it hasn't happened. I think the Moscow Police Department has done an admirable job over the years of dealing with what they had to deal with and not dealing with what they didn't have to deal with. And I live in a mixed-use neighborhood, and every now and then it gets a little crazy, but for the most part I'm able to go to sleep, and that's really all I'm looking for. So I think you guys are doing a good job.
Thank you. Additional?
I just have a last question. What do you think was the biggest change in the ordinance that made the biggest difference to help your officers educate people?
Well, I think some of it, when the ordinance changed, if I remember right, it allowed us to be able to stop and just talk to people. Uh-huh. And so when we were going through the neighborhoods and you hear these big parties that are going to, be called in eventually, it gave our officers an opportunity to be able to stop and say, hey, you might want to start quieting this down because we're going to get a complaint when we do. We're going to be back, and then it'll just cause you more issues. So I think it gave us an educational piece to be able to just hear the noise and actually be able to go instead of having to be a called-in complaint.
After. Oh, okay.
Walter?
Thank you.
I was on the 2008 council with John and Bill, and my memory of it is that it allowed the police department to instigate a complaint on their own. Prior to that, we were working it on the phone has to ring first before we can do anything. The way it is since 2008 was a police officer with his window rolling down and driving down the street can go around the block and see what he's hearing and decide whether or not he wishes to approach them at that point on his own.
And I think that was the fear that had started with that ordinance, that the police are just going to use this as their tool to to be able to either, I don't even know what the word you want to use, get out and, bother people. But it really has given us the opportunity to be able to just get out and talk to people and educate a little bit further.
And if you look at it, the numbers are down for the citations that were once written,
Yeah.
even when we went through that different stage. So, except for 2013 spiked up a little bit. Must have had a group that was a little rowdier than.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened that year. But,
Anyway, but it's continually dropped since 2007 and 2008, so 2008. So, well, any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this is a pretty soft meeting for us this evening, but that's the end of our regular meeting, but we're going to go into reports now. And Catherine, I'll start with you.
No reports.
No reports. John?
Nothing.
And this is not surprising because we have had a really soft 2 weeks, all of this, so which has been kind of nice. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to still have a council meeting tonight, so it gets us back in the groove and to start for 2017. Jim,
I have nothing to report, sir.
I have one. The Sustainable Environment Commission met and had two primary points of discussion. One was that the pesticide list from the Parks and Rec Department and the Streets Department are going to be presented for review by the SEC on January 17th, and they'll look into it to see if there's anything in there that's particularly deleterious, like neonicotinoids, which preferentially impact the bee population, and try to get rid of as many overlapping pesticides as possible. So we'll see a recommendation from the Sustainable Environment Commission eventually about that issue. And there was also considerable discussion relative to the commercial recycling folderol, where the letter was sent to the commercial business school people saying that LSI was not going to pick up recycling from them anymore. So the SEC was perhaps understandably concerned about this, and we'll probably be receiving a letter from them saying, could you look into this and try to keep the recycling going? So those were the primary points. The Tree Commission was supposed to be meeting today, but they kicked it off until Thursday.
okay. Walter,
Gary may have a comment on the commercial recycling.
if you want, Gary.
Okay. Yes, the service that LSI was referenced in that letter is a service that was provided, was not contemplated within our agreement. So it was privately provided by LSI to those commercial businesses. However, Tim Davis, we met and talked about it. He sent a request to Latah Sanitation to have them respond to, rather than just having them terminate the service, what would they charge if we were to include that in our franchise agreement. So we expect to receive a response from them within the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, LSI has agreed to continue the service until that is determined. So that'll be coming back before you in the next couple of weeks.
Walter.
The only report I have is not a commission, but a football game I attended down at the Holiday Bowl, where the Cougars got their helmets handed to them. And it occurred to me, and I could be wrong, but it looks to me like the Vandals are the only football team to win a bowl in the Northwest. Boise State lost. UW lost.
Which is unfortunate.
WSU lost. And the Vandals won big time. The score does not even indicate how much they beat Colorado State. So I just thought I might want to point that out.
Well,
Good report,
Walter. I'm glad you pointed that out, because that was one of the 4-hour meetings that I had, was sitting on my couch enjoying the Vandals beat Colorado State. I enjoyed the whole 4 hours I was there, and it was very productive for me because, well, it was just a very nice evening, so I enjoyed myself. But with that, there's some other things I need to talk about, and one is the Smithsonian waterway displays that we have out here. Folks, this has been, for those out there in TV land that have not made a trip to City Hall, a fabulous museum work on all 3 floors here in the City Hall. And it's going to be here for a few more weeks, so any of those out there that have not had a chance to come and see it, it is very neat to see. And water is a very precious commodity for everybody, not just here in Moscow, but the entire world. And so it's something that we're always going to have to address in future years. And getting down to the basic rights that everybody should be able to have: clean,
potable water is a necessity worldwide. So, that, and I also want to talk about the street guys. I'm using that generically. I don't know if we have any female drivers on our street crew that's doing the snow removal and stuff, but
Not that I know of, but we utilize some of our water production crew, and we do have some women in those positions that may or may not be doing snow removal, but I can find out.
well, they've been doing a fabulous job. I've been getting lots of good comments for the folks from streets and what they're doing, and lots of comments about the Berminator, taking off the Berminator. Boy, as much snow as we got, we'd have one about 6 feet high right down the middle of every street in downtown here, so that's been pretty nice. And I wanted, Tyler Palmer sent out a fuel report, and in 2010, we used 56,000 gallons of fuel, and this year, in 2016, and this goes right through the end of December, we've used 47,500. So we've used 8,500 less gallons of fuel than we did 6 years ago. And the point that I want to make, that's with a pretty busy December for snow. I mean, lots of trucks out there, multiple hours running up, road graders and so on and so forth. And so that's an 8,500 gallon less fuel that we used 6 years ago, and that's pretty predominant every single year for the last 6 years, and that's been implemented by fuel efficiency, getting rid of a few rigs that we didn't need, and just being smart about how we're doing it. And that, kudos to our street guys for that, because you know, if you look at that and you take that, figure that over a 10-year period, 85,000 gallons of fuel, that's a chunk of dough. That's a bunch of work on streets, or that's some other funds that can go to something else for us. And so that's a big deal for us. And so I'm very, very proud of everybody for that, Gary. And so I wanted to bring that up, and so that everybody could get a chance to, I know that Tyler sent that out, and I'm sure counselors got a chance to see that. That's a big deal for us, and our community out there needs to know these sort of things, because it's the little things that can turn into the big things over the years. If we do enough of these things, back when I was in business, and not in as a public servant, we used to call things like this best ball, because we were always designated on our supplies and expenses that we can control, and how well we did that. And this is a good example of what we used to call, where I worked as manager, best ball. So there we have it. Gary?
The only comment I would make is you kind of spurred my memory when you talked about the berms being removed. When we used to have to privately contract for those berms to be removed, we would wait, because it was extremely expensive, between $7,000 and $10,000 for one single removal. So naturally you would wait. I remember Tom Lamar, who used to serve on this council, was quite a cross-country skier, and he skied to the council meeting one night on top of one of those berms on Washington Street, and it was a constant source of complaints. So with the amount of snow that we've had, the accumulation, to have the streets as clear as they are with no berms is just a treat, and amazingly affordable compared to how we used to remove them. So kudos to the street guys.
Absolutely.
Okay. Walter?
I can only comment that the city of Meridian, Idaho, only plows arterials. Just leave it at that.
Well, Walter, you're going to have to work on them down there. That, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody. We're out here at 7:28. Thank you all for attending.